I heard the crash before I heard her scream. It was sharp, metallic, like something tearing through the quiet afternoon. I ran outside, not even thinking, and the first thing I saw was glass all over the driveway. My BMW's windshield was gone, completely smashed in. And standing over it, gripping a hammer with both hands, was my sister Callie. She didn't even look surprised to see me. Her face was twisted with anger, her hair sticking to her cheeks, her breath coming out in fast, shaky bursts. She lifted the hammer again and shouted that I deserved it, that I had pushed her too far, that I never cared about her. I didn't even understand what she was talking about. I just froze, staring at the person I grew up with, the person who had always acted like the world owed her something, now destroying something she thought belonged to me. I yelled her name, trying to get her to stop, but she slammed the hammer down again, hard. The sound echoed across the driveway. Shards flew everywhere. My whole chest tightened. I'd never seen her like that, completely out of control, like she wasn't even aware of herself anymore. But then everything changed. When I shouted that she needed to stop because it wasn't my car, the hammer slipped from her hand. It hit the pavement with a dull thud. Her breathing stopped. She finally looked at me, really looked at me, and all that rage drained out of her face so fast it was like watching a bucket of paint spill. "Not yours," she whispered, her voice cracking. I nodded, still catching my breath. And when I said the name of the person who actually owned the car, she staggered back like I had punched her. Her hands trembled. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Suddenly she looked small, scared, completely lost. Her eyes bounced between me and the shattered BMW like she was trying to wake up from a nightmare. She knew exactly whose car it was. And she knew exactly what that meant. Callie wrapped her arms around herself, shaking so hard the bracelets on her wrists rattled. The hammer lay at her feet, surrounded by broken glass. She wasn't yelling anymore. She wasn't angry anymore. She was terrified. I didn't feel angry in that moment. I didn't even feel shocked anymore. I just stood there, staring at her, realizing this was the moment everything between us changed. The moment she crossed a line she couldn't ever take back. Growing up in the Brenton house never felt balanced. Even when I was little, I could tell things leaned in one direction, and that direction was always toward Callie. Our mother, Darlene, treated her like she was made of glass and gold at the same time. Callie could scream, break things, lie, skip school. Mom always had an excuse ready for her. "She's sensitive," she'd say. "She's under pressure." Meanwhile, if I so much as closed a door too hard, Mom would snap at me for having an attitude. I learned early to stay quiet, stay small, and stay out of trouble. It didn't matter. I was still blamed for whatever went wrong in the house. If Callie failed a class, it was because I didn't help her enough. If she got into a fight with a friend, Mom said I should have set a better example. I didn't understand how I could be responsible for someone older than me, but arguing never got me anywhere. Mom always shut me down before I finished a sentence. Our dad, Reed, left when I was 12. The house felt even heavier after that. He tried to stay in our lives, but Mom made it difficult. She talked about him like he was a stranger who had abandoned us, even though he called every week and tried to take us out whenever she'd allow it. Callie picked up Mom's attitude quickly, treating Dad like he was a disappointment. But I clung to whatever time he offered. He listened. He believed me. He saw things Mom never wanted to admit. While Dad rebuilt his life, Mom tightened her hold on us. Actually, on Callie. Not me. I was just another piece of furniture in the house, useful only when she needed someone to blame or fix something Callie broke. Over the years, Callie learned that she didn't have to face consequences. If she got a speeding ticket, Mom paid it. If she quit a job, Mom blamed the boss. If she broke up with a boyfriend, Mom said the boy wasn't good enough. It shaped Callie into someone who expected life to bend for her. I went the opposite direction. I worked after school, saved every dollar, handled things myself. Nobody praised me for it. Nobody even noticed. But I knew I couldn't count on Mom, and I didn't want to end up like Callie, floating through life, expecting someone else to clean up the mess. Still, the distance between us grew larger every year. Resentment lived quietly inside me, the kind that sits so deep it barely moves. Callie never saw it. She thought I was just quiet, just boring, just the brother who didn't matter. But the truth was simple. I had spent my whole life being the one who held everything together while she got to tear everything apart. And that history didn't disappear the day she lifted that hammer. It only made sense of why she did it. Moving out of my mother's house had been something I wanted for years, but I never had the chance until my dad stepped in. He had been getting back on his feet for a while, slowly building a small contracting business with a partner named Soren Whitlock. Soren was one of those men who didn't waste words. He looked serious even when he wasn't trying to be, and he expected everyone around him to work hard. Most people were nervous around him, but he had always treated me fairly. When Dad heard I was taking extra shifts and walking to work because my old car finally died, he told me to come by his office. I thought he had another part-time job lined up for me, or maybe needed help on a project. Instead, he walked me outside and pointed to a BMW parked under a tree. It looked expensive, clean, nothing like anything I ever thought I'd drive. Dad explained that Soren wasn't using it for a few months because he was traveling. They needed the car started and moved around so it didn't sit too long. Dad asked if I wanted to use it while I saved for my own vehicle. He said they trusted me. That word hit me harder than anything else, trusted. Something I had never felt from my mother or Callie. When Soren handed me the keys, he didn't smile, but he gave me a firm nod. "Don't be stupid with it," he said. That was all. But coming from him, it felt like a compliment. It felt like someone finally saw that I was responsible, steady, capable. Something more than the shadow my mother treated me as. Driving the BMW for the first time felt like breathing fresh air after years in a closed room. It wasn't about the luxury. It was the feeling of finally moving forward, even if the car wasn't mine. I could get to work without begging rides. I could visit Dad more. I could think about my own future without worrying about breaking down on the side of the road. When I parked it in front of my mother's house, I didn't expect Callie to notice. But she did. Immediately. Her eyes followed the car like it offended her just by existing. She didn't ask about it. She didn't congratulate me. She just looked at it the way she looked at anything that didn't belong to her, like it should. Still, for a few weeks, things were peaceful enough. I went to work. I saved money. I focused on myself. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't trapped in the old patterns of our family. I had something stable, something that felt like a small piece of freedom. I didn't know then that the same car, my one symbol of progress, would become the exact thing Callie targeted when she finally snapped. Callie's life started falling apart faster than anyone expected, and somehow every piece of it landed at my feet. She lost her job first. She said her manager didn't respect her. But everyone knew she had been late more times than she showed up on time. Not long after that, her boyfriend packed up and left. He didn't give her much of a reason, only that he was tired of the drama. When she told Mom, she cried like she'd been betrayed by the whole world. Mom didn't hesitate to point a finger at me. She said if I had helped Callie more, supported her more, or been less selfish, maybe Callie wouldn't be going through so much. I didn't understand how any of it connected to me, but arguing only made things worse. Mom always found a way to twist the situation until I somehow became the cause of Callie's problems. With nowhere else to go, Callie moved back home. The house felt tighter with her there again. She stomped through rooms, slammed cabinets, and spent most of her time complaining about how unfair life was. Every time she passed me, she had something to say under her breath, little comments about how I had no real responsibilities or how Dad always handed me everything. The real turning point came when she saw the BMW parked in the driveway. She stared at it like it hurt her eyes. Mom asked about it, and before I could even explain, Callie jumped in, saying, "Of course he gets a new car right when I lose everything." Her voice carried the bitter tone I had heard my whole life. I told them it wasn't mine, that I was only borrowing it temporarily, but Callie didn't believe me. Or maybe she didn't want to believe me. In her mind, everything good that happened to me meant something was being taken away from her. She kept saying it was typical of me to get lucky, typical of Dad to play favorites, typical of everyone to give me handouts while she had to struggle. Mom didn't help. She kept saying Callie deserved a break, deserved a chance to get her life back together, deserved more support from the men in the family. Meaning me and Dad. It didn't matter how hard I worked or how many things I had handled on my own. In their eyes, I had it easy because I didn't fall apart the way Callie did. Jealousy grew in her like something alive. She'd walk past the BMW and glare at it. Sometimes I caught her running her hand across the hood with a look I couldn't read. It wasn't admiration. It was resentment. She started talking about how I owed her, how siblings were supposed to help each other, how I had been carried my whole life, and now it was my turn to carry her. None of it was true, but she believed every word. And the more she convinced herself, the angrier she became. It was only a matter of time before anger turned into something sharper, something reckless. and eventually, it pushed her to pick up a hammer. The fight started early in the morning, before I had even finished my coffee. Callie walked into the kitchen already dressed, already irritated, already expecting the world to line up for her like it always had. She said she had a job interview across town and needed the BMW. She didn't ask. She didn't explain. She just told me to hand her the keys. I told her no. Calmly at first. I said the car wasn't mine to lend. I said it belonged to someone else and I couldn't risk anything happening to it. But she didn't hear any of that. Her face tightened, and she leaned across the counter like she was talking to someone beneath her. So you get to drive around in a luxury car while I'm trying to rebuild my life, and you won't even help me for one morning, she snapped. I repeated that the car wasn't mine. I explained again. It didn't matter. She only got louder. Mom, hearing the noise, walked in and immediately sided with her, saying families share what they have. She told me I was being selfish, dramatic, and ungrateful. She said Callie deserved support after everything she had been through. I stood there, trapped between the two of them, the same way I had been my whole childhood. Blamed, cornered, expected to give up whatever I had because Callie wanted it. I tried to keep my voice steady, but they pushed and pushed until my patience cracked. Mom kept saying the car was just a vehicle. She said I could replace it if something happened. That made me snap. I raised my voice for the first time and reminded them both that it wasn't mine to replace. I told them I wasn't risking someone else's property just so Callie could feel better about her mistakes. That word, mistakes, hit Callie like a slap. Her eyes went sharp, almost glassy. She said I had no right to judge her, that I had always looked down on her. I told her that wasn't true, but the words kept tumbling out of me, faster than I could stop them. I said maybe her life wouldn't keep falling apart if she learned to take responsibility instead of expecting everyone else to fix things. As soon as the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Not because they weren't true, but because I knew how she would take them. Callie pushed her chair back so hard it scraped the floor. Her hands were shaking, her face red, her breath uneven. She pointed at me like she wanted to throw something, but couldn't find anything heavy enough. Then, without another word, she stormed out of the kitchen. I heard the front door slam. Mom glared at me like I had just punched someone. She kept saying I had gone too far, that I had broken Callie on the one day she needed confidence. But deep down, something in my chest tightened with dread. I didn't know where Callie went. I didn't know what she planned. I only knew the look in her eyes before she left. And that look was worse than anger. It was the look of someone who had reached their limit and decided someone else had to pay for it. I heard the first hit before I even saw her. It sounded like metal cracking under too much force, a sound that didn't belong in a quiet neighborhood morning. I ran outside, and there she was, Callie, standing next to the BMW with the toolbox open beside her feet. She had pulled out the biggest hammer she could find, and she was already swinging it with both hands. The windshield was already spiderwebbed, the center crushed inward like a fist had gone straight through it. The hood had a fresh dent, sharp and deep. The side mirror hung by a single wire, dangling and twitching each time she hit something else. She didn't even look up when I shouted her name. She was lost in her anger, moving like she couldn't feel her own body. I ran toward her, yelling for her to stop. She raised the hammer again, her face twisted with the same rage she carried out of the kitchen earlier. She was breathing hard, each breath coming out like she was trying to push the anger out of her lungs. She slammed the hammer down again on the hood, metal bending under it. Callie, stop, I shouted. She didn't. She swung again. I didn't know what else to do, so I yelled the one thing I knew might break through her fury. It's not my car. The words finally hit her harder than any hammer swing. Her arms froze midair. The hammer stayed above her head for a full second before slipping from her grip and falling onto the driveway with a loud clatter. She turned slowly, her chest rising and falling. What do you mean, not your car? She asked, her voice thin, almost hollow. I stepped closer, pointing at the mess she had made. It doesn't belong to me, I said. It's Soren Whitlock's. Her entire face changed in a single heartbeat. The anger drained out first, then the confusion, then everything else. She went pale, so pale it looked like the cold morning air had sucked the color right out of her. Her knees bent slightly, and she reached out for the edge of the car like she needed something to hold on to. You're lying, she whispered, but the fear in her voice showed she already believed me. I shook my head. I'm not lying. Dad's business partner. The man who loaned it to me. She stumbled backward, shaking her head again and again. Her breaths turned sharp and quick. She knew Soren. Everyone in town knew him, strict, rich, and not the type to forgive damage, especially when it came to something expensive. She understood exactly what kind of debt she had just created. Her legs finally gave out, and she sank onto the driveway, hands covering her mouth. She kept saying the same thing under her breath, voice cracking like she couldn't hold herself together. What did I do? What did I do? For the first time in my life, I watched Callie break. Not from sadness, not from drama, but from the weight of something she couldn't escape. And for once, I wasn't the one who had to pick up the pieces. Soren showed up faster than I expected. I thought he might send a tow truck or call my dad first, but no. He drove up himself in a dark sedan that looked like it cost more than our whole house. He stepped out calmly, wearing the same expression he always had, unreadable, firm, and serious. He didn't look at me first. He walked straight to the BMW and took in every inch of the damage. He didn't curse. He didn't shout. He didn't even raise an eyebrow. He just studied the shattered windshield, the dented hood, the smashed mirror, and the hammer still lying in the driveway. Then he turned to Callie, who was still sitting on the ground, her face blotchy and streaked with tears. "Stand up," he said. His voice was low, but it had weight. She obeyed instantly, her legs shaking as she pulled herself upright. Darlene came rushing out of the house at that moment, yelling at me first, asking why I had caused this scene. But when she saw the car and then saw Soren, her voice faltered. Soren didn't waste time. He opened his phone, took a few pictures, and typed something in quickly. He didn't ask for explanations. He didn't care about excuses. After a minute, he turned the screen toward Callie and Darlene. On it was a number, so high it made both of them freeze. "This is the estimate," he said. "You are responsible for every dollar." Callie made a small sound, almost like a gasp. Darlene's jaw dropped. She tried to speak, but only a few broken words came out. When she finally gathered herself, she pointed at me. "This is his fault," she said desperately. "He upset her. He pushed her over the edge. You should be talking to him, not." But Soren cut her off so sharply it felt like the air shifted. "No," he said. "Your son did nothing wrong. I trusted him with this car. He honored that trust. Your daughter destroyed it." He looked directly at Callie. "And she will handle the consequences." Darlene tried again, her voice rising in panic, but Soren didn't let her finish. "If you want to argue about responsibility," he said slowly, "you should ask yourself why your daughter believed she had the right to damage property that wasn't hers. That shut her down immediately. For once, I wasn't the one being blamed. For once, someone else saw the truth without me having to defend myself." It felt strange, almost unreal, to see Callie standing there with no shield, no excuses, no way to escape what she had done. Soren lowered the phone and slid it back into his pocket. "You will receive the full breakdown by tomorrow," he said. "Payment arrangements will be made. Do not test my patience." Callie nodded weakly. She couldn't meet his eyes. Soren turned to me then, his expression softening just slightly. "This was not your burden," he said. "But I'm glad you called." Then he left as silently as he arrived, the weight of his presence lingering long after his car disappeared down the street. I stood there watching my mother and sister, two people who had always towered over me, now shaken, small, and unsure. For the first time in my life, the balance had shifted. And it shifted without me lifting a finger. Callie's panic hit fast and hard the moment Soren left the house. As soon as the door closed, she collapsed onto the couch, shaking and crying like the ground had vanished under her feet. She kept saying the number over and over, as if repeating it might somehow make it smaller. It didn't. Every time she said it, she only cried harder. Darlene tried to comfort her, but her voice was trembling too. They both knew they didn't have the money. Not even close. Within minutes, Darlene turned toward Wyatt with desperate eyes. She didn't waste time pretending this was anyone else's mess. She simply said, "Wyatt, you have to help us. Please. You always figure things out." Her voice wasn't firm this time. It wasn't demanding or angry. It was pleading. But instead of feeling pulled in, Wyatt felt something inside him finally let go. It was like a tight rope that had been cutting into him for years had snapped. He looked at Callie first, his sister who had spent her whole life expecting someone else to clean after her choices. Then he looked at Darlene, the woman who had raised him to believe he was responsible for everyone's feelings but his own. And for the first time, he didn't feel guilty. He felt tired. Deep, bone-heavy tired. "I'm not fixing this," he said quietly. "No yelling. No anger. Just truth." Darlene's face broke. She looked betrayed, as if he'd abandoned them in their darkest moment. But Wyatt couldn't help thinking about all the times he had asked for help and been told to toughen up or stop overreacting. Those memories stung in a way he couldn't ignore anymore. Callie stared at him with wide, red eyes. She looked young, younger than him for once. She whispered, "Wyatt, please. I don't know what to do." Her voice shook. He believed her. But he also knew that if he stepped in now, nothing would ever change. She would learn nothing. Darlene would learn nothing. And he would stay trapped in the same role he had been forced into since childhood. So he stood up, walked to his room, and packed a small bag. Darlene followed him, begging, promising, accusing. She shifted through every emotion to pull him back. But he kept packing. He kept moving. When he zipped the bag, something inside him settled. A strange, quiet peace. Wyatt called his father, who told him to come over immediately. When Wyatt walked out with his bag, Callie sobbed harder. She wasn't crying for him. She was crying for the weight she would now have to carry on her own. And Darlene watched him go with a mixture of fear and disbelief, as if she never imagined he'd actually walk away. That night, in his father's house, Wyatt lay awake staring at the ceiling. For the first time in years, he wasn't scared or guilty. He felt grief, a real, heavy grief, for a family that had never protected him the way he had protected them. And somewhere in the middle of that sadness, he realized something painful but freeing. Callie would finally face the consequences of her choices. And he would finally stop carrying a burden that was never his. Wyatt's days slowly became calm again once he settled at his father's place. It wasn't perfect, but it was steady, and steady felt like a luxury after everything he had carried for years. Reed checked on him often, making sure he was eating, resting, and not slipping back into guilt. Soren wasn't soft, but he respected Wyatt in a way that felt new. He spoke to Wyatt like someone whose presence mattered. They both noticed his work ethic, how he showed up early, stayed late, and never complained. For the first time in his life, the effort he gave was met with appreciation rather than expectation. Wyatt didn't talk much about what happened with Callie and Darlene. He didn't have to. Reed and Soren already knew enough. They gave him space to heal, and Wyatt slowly began to see his own value outside the role his mother forced on him. The more he focused on himself, his job, his peace, his future, the clearer everything became. He didn't need revenge. He didn't need to prove anything. Just stepping away had been enough to shake everything at home. Meanwhile, life for Callie had changed completely. She couldn't charm her way out of Soren's bill. She couldn't run away from responsibility. So she did something she had never done before. She worked. She picked up jobs, early mornings, late nights, whatever she could find. Each paycheck went into chipping away at the amount she owed. It was slow and exhausting. Every time she came home tired, every time she opened a bill with shaky hands, she felt the weight of Wyatt not being there to shield her. And deep down, she knew this was the first real consequence she had ever faced. Darlene tried to support her daughter, but the cracks in her beliefs grew sharper every day. Without Wyatt to hold everything together, the house felt unsteady. Bills piled up. Stress became constant. For the first time, Darlene saw how much she had depended on the son she treated like a spare piece of furniture. The favoritism she once defended so fiercely began to fall apart when she realized Callie struggled with every new responsibility while Wyatt was thriving away from them. But Wyatt didn't watch any of this with satisfaction. He wasn't checking to see if they were suffering. He wasn't whispering to anyone about how they deserved it. He simply lived his life, healed in small steps, and let the truth stand on its own. That was the real revenge, not loud, not cruel, not planned. It was the silence that spoke for him. It was the distance that finally revealed everything. Months passed, and the tension from that morning began to fade, though it never fully disappeared. Callie finally came to me one evening, looking smaller somehow, like the anger that had once filled her had drained her entirely. She stood in the doorway, twisting her hands together, avoiding my eyes. "Wyatt, she started, then stopped, took a deep breath, and tried again. "I'm sorry. For everything. For the car, for the yelling, for always expecting you to fix things." Her words weren't perfect. They were awkward and late. But they were real. I could hear it in her voice, the weight she had carried, the shame, and maybe the first hint of understanding. I didn't feel a surge of triumph or anger. I simply nodded. "I accept your apology," I said. "But things have to be different now. I can't keep being pulled into everything that breaks in this family." Callie's shoulders sagged. She looked relieved and maybe a little surprised. For years, she had counted on me stepping in, smoothing over the chaos she left behind. But now, for the first time, she realized that I wasn't going to do that anymore. She would have to face life on her own terms, and for once fully accountable for her choices. Darlene stayed quiet during this moment, and I noticed her watching me in a way she hadn't before. I didn't need her approval, but it was clear she was starting to understand something she had ignored for years. Wyatt Brenton was not the same boy who had let everything fall on his shoulders. He had grown, and he had boundaries. She couldn't manipulate them anymore. Around the same time, Soren called me to his office. He offered me a permanent position at his company. He said he appreciated my honesty, my diligence, and the way I handled everything with integrity, even under pressure. For the first time, someone outside my family was rewarding me for who I truly was, not just what I could do for others. I accepted without hesitation, knowing that this opportunity marked the next step in my life, one I earned and fully deserved. I moved forward slowly, deliberately, focusing on work, my own future, and my own peace. Callie worked on hers too, learning lessons that no apology or pleading could teach. Our mother remained part of our lives, but no longer the center of every decision. For the first time, I saw a life where I was not defined by the chaos of others, but by my own choices. Sometimes I realized the most powerful revenge isn't smashing things or shouting in anger. It's simply becoming the person they said you couldn't be, strong, responsible, and unshakable, while they face the consequences of their own mistakes. And in that quiet, solid truth, I finally felt free.